Alright, in the carport garage today. And today we'll pick up Chris later from the airport. And we're going to change the wastegate springs in his and test drive it, do some hits, and change the AFR. Change the jets for the AFR as needed. I think it needs to go down one in the front and maybe two in the back. But other than that, wastegate springs, and that was done. I think it's going to do pretty good. We'll see. But right here, we're going to finish the wiring on it. I wish I'd broke the initial video up a little bit more. But just to recap, the battery runs from here. It goes to the alternator. It goes to the back of the starter. And then it comes up here to this little power block. And then the ground goes to down to the motor mount, actually, on the frame. And then it comes up to here. That's stock. That's what it is, stock. And then I ran some 10 gauge wire, which I think would be plenty. And I grounded it right there where the battery and some other stuff ground out at. And then this kind of sends power everywhere. And that's where the fuel pump's power wire, that's where the power wire is going to go. And I ran those all the way to the trunk, underneath the kick panel there. Underneath that. Oh, I don't even know where I'm showing you. Yeah, underneath that. And then back up through yonder. Those go in the trunk. And then I got this switch over here that I had before. It's hooked up to a key on power, so it won't come on unless the key's on regardless. So I can leave that on unless I'm loading a tune, and I can flip it off and it'll shut the pumps off in the surge tank. And then the factory pump, that switch will turn off and on the fuel pumps in the surge tank. And then the factory pump, when you initially turn the key on, it just goes and then it stops. And then when you start the car, it comes back on. But it just kind of primes and then stops when you turn the key on. And then when I load a tune, I can just flip that switch down and turn the key on, load the tune. But anyway, it's a hot wire. It comes over here and it goes up through there with all the rest of them. And then back here, right here where the wire stripper's at, the sound wrench, I'm going to mount a power block. And I'm going to run them wires up under there. You won't be able to see all that once I lay the carpet back down. All you'll see is these lines coming out here. Probably cut a little hole for all those wires to come out at, and they'll be tucked down in there. And I'm going to put a power block right there. And then I'll have a couple of relays mounted up here. And the relays go to these. They'll have main power going through them, and then they'll be grounded out, and then the switch will turn the relays on, and I'll show you how I do the relays. Alright, and here's the power block. Not sure if I'm going to use this one. I ordered some cheaper ones on eBay, or not eBay, Summit. Not cheaper ones. I ordered more expensive ones that are smaller. This one's a little bit too bulky because I only need one of these big ones and two of these small ones. So I don't need half of this. But anyway, this is the power side, this is the ground side. So what's going to happen is these relays, now generally current flows through, this is the main one right here. Generally current flows through these two. Whoops. Now, when you add a power on one side, I don't even think it matters, and a ground on the other side, and again, I don't think it matters, power and ground, power and ground. but it's got to have both a power and a ground to activate it. And once you activate it, then current flows through these two. So and you can do this with a power wire or a ground wire to trip whatever you've got. But I'm going to do power wire. So a power wire is going to come in here, and a power wire is going to come out here and then go to the positive side of the fuel pump. And then the ground will just be, the ground side of the fuel pump is just going to be grounded to the power block. This will be grounded to the power block, and then my switch is going to go right here. So when I flip the switch, this is already grounded. It gets power, and then it energizes, and then current flows through here and turns the pump on. Now, the hobs on the second pump, for now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to unhook one pump from here when I'm not using it. I'll just unhook it from here. But when I'm going to make a pass that's going to have more than 4 pounds of boost, I'll just hook it back up before I go to the staging lanes or in the staging lanes. But eventually, the ground side is going to run to a Hobbs switch, which the Hobbs switch will be set to about 4 psi boost. So, and you can order those on eBay or Summit or Jegs or wherever, but I'll put the Hobbs switch in here somewhere. They got an 1/8 inch NPT thread, but I mean, I could put it in line with a map sensor, or I could put it down there on the turbo housing or anyway, but I'll just run a ground wire from this side, because remember, it won't trip unless it sees power and ground. So the ground will go from here, it'll go up to the Hobbs switch somewhere in here that'll read boost pressure. Once that Hobbs switch sees, and then I'll just run a ground from it to somewhere in here on the motor or whatever. But when the Hobbs switch sees 4 pounds of boost, it'll complete the circuit and ground this out, and then this will kick on. You know, I'll have the switch will be turned on, it'll be getting hot, but it won't be getting ground until that Hobbs switch sees 4 pounds of boost, or whatever one I choose to get. It's probably going to be a 4 psi pound Hobbs switch, and then it'll kick it on. But for now, I'll just leave one of these unhooked so the pump can't come on when I'm driving around. Then when I'm going to make a hit with more than 4 pounds of boost, then I'll just plug it back in and it'll come on with the switch. But that's how we're going to wire her in. Pump 1, pump 2. Pump 1 is the 525 liter per hour. That one's going to run all the time, as well as the one in the tank will run all the time. And then this one will only turn on, which is a 450. This one will go to the 450 in pump 2. That one will only come on when we're going to go over 4 pounds of boost. I'm just going to use some self tappers, tap everything down. And then this is what I'm going to use to make my connections onto the relay. And I'm going to use some 16 gauge, actually I'm going to use 12 gauge wire, 14 to 16. I wish I had some 14 gauge wire. Yeah. Let's see if I can find some 14 gauge wire. If not, I'm going to use a 12. You can use 16, but I don't know. That should go without saying, but make sure you unhook the battery or unhook your wires from the battery before you go to working back here. Ground wire is hooked up. Power wire is not hooked up front, so we're good there. So I drilled some starter holes, did the self tappers, and then I ran some eyelets there. So now we got power all down here and ground all down here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and mount the 2 relays right here, and then I'll split this and run to each power side to activate the relay with this. All right, relays are mounted. I just put that cap on there because I wanted to make sure I didn't put the relays too close to it. Now run some wires. All right, we got that's the switch to turn the pumps on, wired to the hot side of the relay. And then we're just going to run this side straight over the ground. But I'm going to go get some 14 gauge wire. Some people say to use bigger wire, but in the tank, the stock pump comes with wires that come up so far, and they're 14 gauge. So I'm going to use 14 gauge wire. Actually, to activate the relay though, this power and ground, you don't need much wire. You don't need much wire at all. You can probably use a 18 or 20 gauge wire because it doesn't take much amps at all to trip. But running through here and your grounds and your power for the pump, those need to be at least 14, 12. Some even say 10. I'm more on, well, 10 to 16 is what some people say, but the wires that come with the pump inside the pump are 14, so I'm gonna use 14. All right, and the ground wire to trip the solenoid, I just ran them into 2 wires. It don't take much to trip the solenoid on the sides, on the power and ground. The main thing goes through these 3 in the middle. But anyway, I round that up, put it there. Now I'm gonna run these 2 straight to ground on the pumps because we're gonna kick it on with power from the relays. All right, now we got our grounds ran from here over, around, and straight to the negative side of each pump. Now we're going to run 2 off here to this bottom part of the relay. All right, now we got power from the power block going over to the bottom part of the relay. And again, until this sees power and ground, it won't send it out this one. And our power, we're already grounded, but our power is off the switch under the dash. And then we're going to run this straight over to power off the top of both of these over to power, and that's going to do that. There we go. We're all done. These top 2 go over. I flip the switch. I put a multimeter on these to make sure both of them are getting power, and they are, and everything's running. Now we'll just wire loom up this a little bit, make it look pretty. That's going to do it for this video. Y'all like and subscribe and have a great day. I'm going to go pick Christopher up from the airport.